but can we just give Cheryl a round of applause for keeping moving? This evening also is so important because in the 20 plus years that I've been working on environmental justice, one of the challenges that we've always faced, and one of the reasons that we've done this summit, is to be able to help to leverage the resources to meet the needs of communities and to address the visions that the communities have. So community should be a driver in the work that all of us is doing in collaboration. So what we're doing here tonight is you look around the room, we have all kinds of different organizations. We have business and industry, we have grassroots organizations, we have foundations, we have so many other stakeholders who are here to talk and to share their various tools, resources, technical assistance, and to talk about what their visions are so that they can align with the visions that communities have in making change inside their communities. And this wouldn't be possible without the sponsors who actually played a huge role in stepping up and helping to fund this particular aspect of the summit. So I want to thank each of them who are here tonight. And we wanted to give them just a couple of minutes to share why they thought it was important to invest in this space and why working in vulnerable communities is so important. So we have a few folks who are going to speak tonight. And again, it's just for a couple of minutes, so we don't want to put folks on the spot for too long. And then I'm going to ask another person who helped raise me, Dr. Beverly Wright, to come forward, and she's going to share about some of the work that she's been doing for, at least that I know of, 30 plus years. Okay, I shouldn't say 30 years.
There she is.
So
Dr. Beverly Wright.
With, Nicholas Tarr. Yes. Oh, hey, Cheryl, could you come forward? And could you just share with folks a little bit about your mom? We were saying that this is the Hazel M. Johnson Eco Cafe, and you were nice enough to allow us to utilize your mother's name. And if you could just share just for a couple of minutes about your mom and the work that you guys did around vulnerable communities.
Hi, thank you again, Mustafa, and everybody from EJ who really thought about my mom. My mother's been doing this, she was doing this work for like almost 30-some years before we even got to the point of EJ issues. I'm from Oak Hill Gardens, far south side of Chicago, is where my mother founded People for Community Recovery. So she heard that the south side of Chicago had the higher incident than any other area in the city of Chicago, and she wanted to know why, because she's seen a pattern in our own community with a high incidence of cancer than any other area. So she started inquiring about it, and from her research, she learned that we have 50 documented landfill and over 300-some pollutant entity. So she called that community the toxic donut. It's like we're in the center of the parameter, and outside the parameter of the donut is all these toxic facilities. But there was no communications or no education about what industrial pollution was doing negatively on the impact of community. And that's how she got started. And from then, I learned that she's not only my mother, she's everybody's mother.
All right.
Because in the whole environmental justice movement, everybody looked to her, because she was one of the oldest in this movement, and they all looked to her and called her mom. And I used to get jealous, like, hey, that's my mom. But as years go past, I understand and I respect it. And I'm so honored to be her daughter. And I'm so honored for her to be the mother of environmental justice, because she really fought to be where we are today. Thank you.
So now I want to give a couple of minutes to some of our sponsors. And the first person I'm going to have come forward is Tim Fields with MDB.
Thank you, Mustafa. Pleasure to be here with all of you. Particularly proud that this is a recognition of Hazel Johnson, who was a true friend and a pioneer for many of us. And Cheryl, great to have you here. Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you, Mustafa, for pulling us all together. For us as a firm, MDB Incorporated, this is a great effort for us to partner with, because we are a firm whose business priorities are environmental justice, sustainable development, and workforce development training. And so we've had the pleasure of working with folks at EPA, HHS, and DOE over the last 15 years now. And this summit that's been pulled together allows us to contribute to something that is a passion for us and is a real priority for us from a business perspective. I'm very pleased to have been a sponsor here. We really enjoyed this first day. I know that tomorrow is going to be great as well. So thank you all for allowing us to participate, and we are very pleased to be a sponsor. I do want to say that we're going to be giving away a free book from Les Leopold at our, we're manning the NIEHS exhibit over at table number 14, and there are books for those who have not already gotten one on the runaway inequality. We are very pleased to give those as a free gift from Les Leopold of the Labor Institute. But again, Mustafa, thanks for your leadership. Thanks to Mava, thanks to Holly and the whole team for pulling together a great summit that we all have enjoyed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.
The next person I'm going to have come forward is Ms. Sue Brigham, and Sue is with Waste Management. And I think Waste Management is a great example of the evolution that's happened in the working relationships around environmental justice. Because we all know when we first started years ago, there were some tough times.
Yeah.
But I think that we should also honor when folks are making positive, progressive movement forward. Because as we move forward, we need all of our partners together, honoring what communities are asking for. So Sue, I want to turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Mustafa. And it's a real privilege to be able to sponsor this reception, especially in honor of Hazel Johnson. I was very, very fortunate to be able to work with her and learn from her. She was such a hero and founder in the environmental justice movement. And was also a great example of the fact that business can come to the table and we can do better, we can be better neighbors, and that it's this kind of engagement where we're seeing all sides that allows us to make progress. So thank you, Mustafa.
Thank you.
All right.
And Sue, along with a lot of the other leaders that you see here in the room, have played a significant role on the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council over the years. And it's given us an opportunity to learn about each other and to be able to focus on issues that we can find common ground. So with that being said, I'd like to ask Nicholas Targ to come forward now, who's with Holland and Knight.
Thank you, Mustafa. So first, I want to say it is a true privilege and it's an honor to be here with you. When I heard about the conference, when Mustafa gave me a call and said, Nick, I want to tell you what it is that we're thinking about, the question that I had is, great, how can we be of help? And it's a privilege to be able to support any program that Mustafa is a part of. I think that it's important to invest in people. And I think that it's a particular privilege to be able to support the community members who are here today, who are looking at ways to work together to achieve the common goal. Not only of creating the kind of communities where you want to live, where you want to pray, and where you want to play, but who are doing it together to achieve that common goal. H&K, Holland and I, we have the, again, privilege to be able to work with communities, with nonprofits, with municipalities and the state, and we work with federal government. It feels very natural to be here. And again, it's a privilege to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have one other of our sponsors who's coming forward. And let me just share for everyone, I keep trying to highlight this. We had over 30 partners who are a part of the design and implementation of this. And that's important if you are either a student of the history of the environmental justice movement, if you are standing on those 17 principles of environmental justice, where partnership means that each person has a voice in the process, and you have to honor that. So I continue to highlight that for folks, that everyone had an equal voice in this. And for me, that's extremely, extremely important. It's also extremely important, because I was a student coming up in the environmental justice movement, that young people's voice is a part of this process.
Yeah.
And we were extremely blessed that the Hip Hop Caucus, when we reached out to them, said, yes, we would like to be a part of this, and yes, we'd like to make sure that we are able to contribute in this space. So I'm going to ask my brother T.C. Muhammad to come forward, who's representing the Hip Hop Caucus tonight.
So So my spirit is kind of, I'm trying to flow with the spirit of what's going on, because when Mustafa asked me to speak, you know, I was like, what? Speak? And I didn't know what to say, but I know that I have to come in the spirit of Reverend Yearwood, our CEO and president, and his spirit. He said, we can't stop, won't stop. But what the spirit gave me is that while we're, you know, I'm going back to that community that we're talking about. You know, I'm blessed to work the Caucus now for 4 years, but I still live in the hood. I still live on that block. So I literally drive every morning watching my neighbors that may not have a job, maybe going to the corner store and get some alcohol, that I'm literally fighting for them. As I'm talking, I'm thinking about, you know, my people still suffering in Katrina after the 11-year anniversary of Katrina. As I'm talking, I'm thinking about when I went to Alton Sterling's funeral, and then the flood came to Baton Rouge, and people are still suffering in Baton Rouge. I'm speaking as I come to you, thinking about what I saw and the tears coming down my eyes in Flint. And knowing that a sister talking about her daily routine is walking upstairs and trying not to burn herself as she takes water into the bathtub, but by the time she finished the process, that water is warm, that she has to take a bath in every day. I'm sitting and looking at Erica, where I remember last year tears coming down my eyes and listening to the story in the Moat House in Newport News and the suffering that our people go through. And I'm sitting here thinking, as I was at the sacred grounds in North Dakota, and with the spiritual ceremonies of our indigenous people, as they're fighting literally right now in front of guns. Not figuratively, while sometimes we come in these meetings and want to wrestle about funding, but regardless of the funding, we got to fight for our people.
That's right. Amen.
People are literally dying. And Reverend Yearwood talks about him bearing a girl and watching her mother trying to jump into the casket because she had to choose medication or food. So when we talk about intersectionality and all these different things, you know, everybody got their role to play in this movement, and no one has a higher role than the other. We got to work together to help save our people.
Amen.
I was in Philly. We're doing a cookout for youth in Philly on our Act on Climate tour, and my phone says air quality alert. And I'm like, wow. And so while my brothers and sisters literally was in Charlotte and Ferguson and all the places in Baltimore uprising and talking about police brutality, and we want to stop that, but I'm like, hold up. You're getting killed from your air. You getting killed from my water. Eric Garner literally couldn't breathe because he had asthma. So while a cop was choking him out, the air quality was choking him out. So, you know, I don't know why I took this long.
That's all right.
I
Go
didn't
ahead.
mean to, but I really want us to, I guess Reverend Yearwood will say, we have to understand the seriousness of this. So I don't see Mustafa as EPA. I see my brother,
Amen.
who's in a position to be able to help and pull us together to wrangle what we need to wrangle to make something happen ultimately for our people. And if you are in it, and if we are in a position of privilege, and I may stay on the block, but I'm in a position of privilege because I'm staying upstairs. That's privilege. And we don't do what we need to do to the fullest extent to help our people, then that's a problem.
Amen. Woo, come on.
And if you don't do it, it's not me that will say it, but the Creator will take your privilege away and give it to somebody else that will do right
Say
by
it.
our
Say it.
people if we don't do it. So we got one more day at this conference, right? So hopefully we can reshape our thinking, our minds, and do what's right. And if your heart wasn't right in the right place, well, it may get shaped a little bit right now to get in the right thinking in the right space so we can do what we need to do. And I'm going to close because I always talk balance, and our sister Nakisa is here with the Hip Hop Caucus. I don't know what she wanted to say. I ain't mean to take that long. And but I will hand it over if she just wanted to say something, because she's handling out our climate work with the Hip Hop Caucus from a national level.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. If I could add anything to what TC said, would just to know the strength that's in this room. Everybody in this room is somebody that we all need to know. There's no one person that is more important to know than anybody else. So I'm just convinced that we have all the tools that we need to be successful, and it would be a shame for us to walk out of this space tomorrow and not go forward and grow and really be about the work and the solutions towards climate justice. And one thing that I would like to add that I got from TC early on, before I even started working with Hip Hop Caucus, TC helped to, because I already had the framework for how environmental issues and social justice issues need each other, but I didn't understand the language that needed to pull it together. And I got it from TC, how he spoke about climate. And climate not being the climate like you look outside in the air and the environment, it's the climate of the conditions of our community. So that's what we mean by climate justice. Climate is not just the green grass. And one of the other things, and I'll leave on this, the environmental movement and the social justice movement, they both need each other.
Yes.
What's the point in having clean air, green grass, and clean water if our people are dying at the hands of social justice issues? What's the point in having and fixing all the social justice issues that we're having in our community if we're dying by the poisonous air and the poisonous water? And so I'm just committed to working towards the solutions, and I look forward to just moving forward. Thank you all.
Excellent.
So again, if you are a historian of the civil rights movement, you know that although there were a couple of men who got a lot of the attention, it was the sisters who are actually the drivers behind that. And if you are a historian of the environmental justice movement, you will know that there are a couple of men who get some of the attention, which is fine, but it is the sisters who actually are the ones who held this movement together and who have been moving it forward for decades.
Amen.
Real talk. Hashtag real talk.
Hashtag.
So we talked about Miss Johnson and the foundation that she laid for us, but there are so many people as you look around this room who've been doing it for years, and none more than Dr. Beverly Wright, who I'm going to ask to come forward here for a second and just share about the work that she's been doing for the past decades. But from the first moment that I met her when I was a student, I knew she was someone who I wanted to emulate, to learn from, to grow, who's been mentored. I'm not going to say she's like my mom, because then
got trouble.
I will say she's like my auntie, who I have extreme love for. And I can't tell you how many students, how many young people across the country are in this movement now, or who have been in it because of her. So with that being said, Dr. Beverly Wright.
Thank you. Thank you, Mustafa. I just want to thank the people who provided this food. This was such a surprise because, you know, we don't get food with EPA. So when they told me it wasn't an EPA event, that explained it for me. We got wonderful food. I just want to thank you all for this delicious food and drink. EPA works us to death and we don't get nothing. We don't even get a contract. So I'm just going to keep it real. But I want to thank TC because he sort of set the mood, you know, for what I want to say. The first thing I want to say to all of you, and I've been around a long time, I do feel like a fossil. Dr. Robert Bullitt's hair is gray, but mine never will be. And you know why. But I've been around a pretty long time. And I often tell people that this work is a calling. I didn't even get into it voluntarily. I was dragged into this work kicking and screaming. But once you have the experience of the suffering of people, you're just sold. You know, you come in and we jumped in with all 2 feet. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Mustafa asked me to talk about in working in environmental, this arena that we now call environmental justice, that used to be environmental equity, if you all remember that. And community people told us, environmental equity, what does that mean? Well, it's the equal distribution of things, right? They said, we don't want anybody to be poisoned. So the word environmental equity meant we want white people to get some poison too. And they said, there's just something wrong about that. You know, we need to deal with justice and not equity. But in all the work that we were doing, fighting for lower emissions for communities that live up and down the Mississippi River Chemical Corridor who were suffering in ways that it's hard for me to describe, with screens rusting and falling off the windows every 3 months, all the small animals dying, little crosses in front of their yards showing the number of people who had died, waking up in the middle of the night, vomiting from the fumes, and watching the paint on your cars just disappear in circles from the chemicals that were falling on them. And then finding out the chemical companies were actually releasing 800 million pounds of toxins into the air, water, and soil in 1984. I went back and re-looked at that and found out, guess what? It wasn't 800 million pounds. The reports show now over 1 billion. So that was self-reporting, but if you go back and look at the records and start adding it up, it's much more than that. So people were suffering and dying from the chemicals that were there. So in working in so many ways, and I want to lift up Monique Harden here, because Monique and TC give me hope for retirement. Really, we need to bring young people in, but we need to bring young people in who are ready to take on this job, who are prepared, willing to learn, willing to suffer. That's the kind of young people we need. We don't need you if you just know how to use an iPhone. Some people think just because they can use it, they could come in, but you know what I'm talking about, and getting off course, but I'm gonna go back. But in all the work that we did, we got one question, and that question was, well, we're real happy with the work that you've done, Dr. Wright. You've really helped us, but we really need help with jobs for our community, jobs for the people in our community. Our kids need work. And so we thought about that, and I believe that God is in the plan. Out of the blue, I get a call from Sharon Beard at NIHS. And Sharon says, I'd like you to come to this meeting in Ohio, where we'll be talking about pulling minorities into a project, by the way, that had been in existence for 10 years before we got the call. And that's training young people in environmental remediation. So I'm like, what? So now they live next to the stuff, now we're gonna give them a job, where they can die from asbestos and all of these things. I'm like, I'm not sure that this is what I need to do. But then after going to the meeting and finding out that the purpose really around all of this work was occupational health and safety. So the driver in it is teaching workers how to work safely. And then meeting people later, all in unions, all about protecting workers. I said, you know what, this is a good program. That was 22 years ago. And since that time, we have implemented Environmental Careers Program, as it's called. Now, it used to be called Minority Worker Training, but I think the Republicans didn't like that, so we had to change the name to Environmental Careers. That's what we are now. Program, actually training young people in, we call it HAZWAPER, but it's also lead abatement, basic construction, asbestos removal. We've done green construction. We're trying to get into solar. That's really kind of expensive, but we're trying to move into the greening of our curriculum. And we have watched lives be transformed. And I'd like to end to tell you to the extent to which we've transformed lives. Well, there's a huge report that I think your company did, which shows the economic benefits of the particular program that we put in place, how it keeps people out of jail, keeps mamas off of welfare, and that's all they want to hear. And they save millions of dollars because people are now employed. But more than that, everywhere I go, I had Monique laughing about this, I was on the radio at home talking about one thing or another, some injustice around Katrina, where African Americans are losing out at every point, discussing those things, and then they open the radio for call-ins. And so I hear somebody, Dr. Wright, Dr. Wright, this is Eddie. I'm like, what? I was in the minority worker training program, Dr. Wright. I got a job. My wife came back. I just want to thank you for everything you've done for me. And I'm telling you, that does my heart good. We actually have many, many stories, but if every time I get on the radio to talk about some issue, I'm gonna get 2 or 3 of them calling me, when's the next program, Dr. Wright? That's their question. I got a cousin, I want the program. So this has been a wonderful program. It has a really long history in terms of its evolution. The program is holistic. We developed a work-based curriculum. It's culturally sensitive. We have counseling, individual and group counseling, basic skills. We teach him how to read, to write. We had a young man who learned how to read in our program. His incentive was he wanted to be able to read to his daughter. By the end of the program, 12 weeks, he could read to his daughter. So we do wonderful work through this program, and everything that I do, so much of what we do is so painful that this program has given my life balance. Because on the one end, you're dealing with people dying and suffering. Then on the other end, you have a program where you're giving life to an individual, a family, to a community. Thank you.
Amen.
Can you give another round of applause for Dr. Wright? I see why I'm always talking about how blessed I am, because I'm surrounded by so many great folks. I'll close with this. I just came back from Texas. I was in like 6 or 7 places. I got on the airplane, I was tired, I sat down, and of course somebody sat down next to me. People always want to talk to you when you're tired. And it was a gentleman, and we started talking about what I did after he shared with me what he did. And then he asked me a question. He said, why do you social justice people always say no justice, no peace? And I said, well, that's a good question. I said, because we're not going to rest until change happens. We're not going to sit idly by until change happens. So as long as there is injustice that is happening in Ferguson, I say no justice, no peace.
That's right.
As long as there is injustice happening in East Chicago, I say no justice,
No peace.
no peace.
That's right.
As long as there is injustice happening in Manchester, Texas, no justice,
No peace.
no peace. As long as there is injustice that is happening in Port Arthur, Texas, no justice,
No peace.
no peace.
Amen.
As long as there is injustice happening in Corpus Christi, Texas, no justice.
No peace.
No peace.
As long as there is injustice that is happening in Ferguson, no justice.
No
No
peace.
And as long as there is injustice happening in Flint, Michigan, no justice.
No
No
peace.
You see, you have power. We just have to decide we're going to use it. And that's why this space is so important. This is our opportunity, as I said at the beginning, for us to join hands, but to join minds, and to strategically think about the steps that we need to take to make change inside of our communities. So our time is now. We just have to decide if we are going to implement the change that is waiting on us. So with that saying, thank you all. I'm Mustafa.
All right. All right.
We had a team of over
Very good session.
130 folks. So between the track team leads, our speakers, our sponsors, we have some wonderful certificates.